Our topic this morning is we're going to be looking at those, is it a sin or is it not a sin too? Or is it a sin too? So, normally there's always a preface, or it goes before a question, and a classic question is it a sin to have a Christmas tree? Is it a sin to eat meat? Is it a sin to look at a woman? Is it a sin to eat food sacrificed to idols? Is it a sin to play ball? All right, so you're familiar with this line of reasoning? Yes. Right, okay, so we're going to be looking at that this morning. That's our topic. Right in there somewhere is a topic. We're looking at those, is it a sin too? With that, we'll just have a short prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, we thank thee again for the blessings of the Sabbath day. And we thank you, dear Lord, for knowing that you are true God. I pray that you may bless our minds and lead us along here by the Spirit, that we might understand more for our salvation and our well-being. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So, is it a sin? Is it a sin to whatever? Now, the problem with is it a sin to question and category of practices is where they often end up and lead. So most things that is asked is it a sin too. Probably all the things that I asked in the introduction there, they're in themselves are not sin too. So the quick answer to that is it a sin to have to eat meat sacrificed to idol, and the quick answer would be no. Is it a sin to look upon a woman? Obviously no. If you have to talk to people, is it a sin to have a Christmas tree? The answer would be no, right? But it goes a little bit deeper. Often our motives are our motives or motivation, I should say, is to work with the situation. So what's the situation there? This time of the year, as you know, the situation is that everybody's getting one. So what must you do? Go get one too. And especially with children, it's sometimes hard to explain to children why is it that we don't have a wreath on our front door, or why is it that we don't have a wreath on the church front door? It's easier many times to explain to adults, but it's many times hard to explain to a child. Why is it that we don't have a Christmas tree in the window or a Christmas tree in the front of the church or so forth? Sometimes it becomes difficult to kids to get it, because not so much that they can't understand what you're saying, but because it is everybody has one. And so because everybody has one, why can't we have it also? And you cannot say we're not having it because it's a sin, because again, it is not a sin. Sin is defined by the Bible, but it's often where that practice leads to that makes it become difficult sometimes to explain, and difficult to even explain to Christians who would say, I don't see anything wrong with it. And I'm going to say, sure, because we know, like murder is a sin. And so you could say that is a sin, but if you say to somebody it's a sin to have a tree or a decoration of a wreath on your front door, then you could look a little bit like you're stretching things. And so it creates that nuance. But the situation often lead to, instead of we are controlling the situation is controlling us. And all of a sudden now you go make one step, and then you have to make step number 2, step number 3, and step number 4. But your intention was not to make those other 3 steps. Your intention was just to do one thing, have this decoration, right? And it goes from decoration to this, to that, to that. So I've been thinking about it this week, because this week will be the last Sabbath, and most churches either last week or this Sabbath will be having their Christmas program, normally a concert or I don't know, some mix of concert and preaching. So I was thinking about it during the week, and I was thinking about this issue of it is not a sin. And then I went, read some Ellen G. White notes on it and stuff like that, and I was pondering it during the week. Is it a sin too? Now, God desires us to live a peaceful life, and He desires also to live a righteous life and humble life. And where most of these, is it a sin too, lead to, is many times to these extremes that cause us to sin, but that's not how it started. Now, our scripture reading is found in Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. And the first question I want to ask is it a sin to pray in public? Now, when you think about that, Because what Christ says next could be viewed on the left or on the right. It could view that Christ is saying it's a sin to pray in public, or Christ is discouraging people from praying in public, or so forth. But the question is it a sin to pray in public? Nope, right? Because when we do church, what are we doing? We're doing public prayer. So let's read the text, Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. And it says here, "And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are. For they love to pray standing in a synagogue and in the corner of the street, that they may be" what? "Seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their" what? Reward. So what is Christ condemning? Is he condemning public prayer? Because again, if you're driving in your car and you feel like you want to whisper a word to Jesus, it's okay. Also, if you're meet somebody along the road and you're talking to them and they utter to you and they tell you a story about something sad that happened to them, is it wrong for you to right there in the public to stand there and give a prayer?
No.
Would it be wrong? Would you be saying, "Look, pray for me, I'm really going through this," and you're overcome with emotions? But there you could take that text and say, Jesus is saying no prayer in what? In public, but that's not what Christ is saying. If you read down in the text, he's saying, what is the motive behind the prayer in public? It is to be what? Seen of men. It is not so much because the person really cares for you, but they have an opportunity. And they have an opportunity and they're going to take that opportunity. And what they're going to do? They're going to, let's pray. And they're going to make a normal thing. I remember I was talking to someone, they said to me, normally when they go to hospitals, and if especially if a person is not like part of our faith, they normally utter the words, "Could I have a quiet prayer with you?" Could I have a quiet prayer? Because some people want to start praying and the whole floor hearing them praying. Because they're going to call on the Holy Spirit down into the hospital room to get the healing. And they're going to make everybody be known. And often, I remember when I just came to church, this whole idea of praying in a loud way, this whole idea of praying in a loud way was looked upon by some people as powerful prayer. You know, prayer warriors. Prayer with power, fervent prayer of the righteous man. And if you've ever heard that idea that a fervent prayer is a person that really just bells it out and just gets it right. Right? And Jesus is going to answer that prayer. And so here it is Christ here is rebuking what I believe, which is the premise of how we live as Christian, is that Christ is rebuking more this issue of not so much is it a sin to pray in public, but it's what are you doing it for? Is it for a show? Is it to be seen of men? Is it to, you know, be sure that says I'm righteous and so. And when we look at all these categories of stuff, it always comes back down to when that question is asked, like, is it a sin to eat meat?
No.
And the answer to it, you could easily say yes, you could say no, but the answer to it is why you ask me the question. What is the problem? What do you do not understand, or what you do understand with the thing? Because you know the definition in the Bible says, to him that knoweth to do good and doing it not, it is sin for him. Right? And so the person ought to know why they're doing what they're doing. And why is it that you're trying to get at when you ask those type of questions? Because often with these things, it is not per se a sin. And you can look at some of these things more. Now in Matthew chapter 5, in one chapter back, and we're going to read verse 27 through 30. The question I'm going to ask, is it a sin to look at a woman? Because again, the Bible makes it very clear what we're talking about. And the person can use these type of arguments to go back and forth to try to escape doing what is wrong or doing what is right. Now, Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 through 30 says here, ye have heard that it's been said by them of old, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh at a woman to what? To lust after her, had committed adultery with her already in his heart. And if thy right hand what? Offend thee, pluck it out, and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into what? Hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee, for it is possible for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. So when we're dealing with some of these nuanced issues, these issues that if somebody asks the question, is it a sin too? This text here is to me one of the main texts that explain to us how we should react with some of these situations. Notice here, is nothing wrong to look at another person. It's not a sin too. The issue oftentimes is why you're looking. And if you start looking and you find that you have a problem, then the Lord says you ought to do what with the action or with the appendage or whatever it is. You should to cut it off. And so I want you to think about that for one of the main points that I'm going here with this season to be jolly. Because what we find is that it's not so much is it like anything wrong with a tree, because, you know, well, they're not tree anymore, but the plants are over there. There's nothing wrong to have the plant, right? Because the plant is it's a decoration. It is something aesthetically beautiful. But where do we go with that? And oftentimes the problem is not so much is it a sin to have a plant or an evergreen tree, because those are the only trees that are green at this time of the year, to decorate in, say, your house or, say, your church or everything. But where are we going with it? Where does it end up? And what's the motive behind it? Because somebody could say, well, we're doing it because it's a nice decoration. Or we're doing it because it's a Christmas. It's a Christmas, and everybody does that. And I say, okay, I'm not thinking if somebody have a read, they're sinning. But where do we go with that? Why are we doing it? What's the motivation? Because if you tell me, say, you're doing a Christmas tree because it is a commemoration of Jesus' birth, I'm going to say, what next? Where are you getting that from? What's the Bible for it? There's no Bible for it, so why are you doing it? It's easy to tell me, say, you're doing it for decoration, and then I can say, okay, because you don't want to add problems to problem. In other words, you're saying, I'm doing it for Jesus' birthday. I'm going to say, no, you're sinning yourself, because you know nothing goes on. There's no such thing as no Christmas tree in commemoration for Jesus' birth. Now, why do you have these little shiny balls on it? You better you tell me that says everybody in the neighborhood has one, and so you're going to get your shiny ball also. But if you say you're doing it in commemoration of Jesus, I want to say, now we're now going to need to cut that thing off. Because now you're going now where, again, nothing wrong to look at a woman, but why are you looking at her? Are you looking at her because you just was seeing where she's going? Or you saw something on her shoulder and you wanted to tell her to get it off the shoulder because there's a fuzz on her clothes? Or you're looking for another, what's the motive behind it? And some of these things, as I'm going to try to work my way through here, it is people put you in a corner. Or sometimes we get put in a corner because we have to make a decision as to what are we going to do, what is the motive behind it. And when we find is that says we make one step, and another step. And then we try to say, well, we're just doing it because this time of the year they cut down a tree, they put it in the house, and they're celebrating Christmas. Okay. If we cut it down and we put it in the house, why are we doing it? Just think about that. Keep working here. So Christ give the principle. Think about that principle. It's if it becomes an issue of an offense, then Christ says what? Cut it off. If it becomes an issue of an offense, cut it off. And I want to talk about that a little bit more because, again, so we're going to get back to that. You often have to just deal directly. Same chapter, Matthew chapter 6 now to the beginning. I'm going to read Matthew chapter 6 where we were before. Matthew chapter 6 verse 1 through 4. Christ here is taken again and it says, would you, now when you think about this with me, would it be a sin to bring a drum corps? You know what a drum corps is? Boom, 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 boom. So this is my drum corps. Would it be a sin for me to bring a drum corps to your house, in front of your house, and to have the drum corps play as I announce that I'm going to donate something to you? Would that be a sin? Would it be a sin for me to do that? Because that's where people ask those questions. Is it a sin? So I come before your house and a drum corps is playing, some guys playing some bugles, and then I say, stop. And then I say, okay, I'm now announcing that this home here, I'm going to give them, you've got $1,000 from me. Probably called me $2,000 for the drum corps. But I'm going to give you is that a sin to do something like that? No, it's not a sin. Or it could be. So listen to what Christ says now. He says, take heed that ye do not your harms before men to be what? Seen of them. Otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is what? In heaven. So is he saying it's a sin? But you're not going. What is the problem? Is it the giving of the money is the problem? How about the drum corps? Is it that problem? Or the drum corps is there because you want to be seen of men? You see, a lot of the activity that we sometimes get ourselves whip ourselves into. I always remember I was at church one Sabbath because these things are real. I've been thinking about them for a while. And the pastor say, we're going to go outside in the front of the church around the flagpole and we're going to pray for the community. So everybody go around the flagpole, made a circle, and praying for the community. Now, was it necessary for her to go outside in the flagpole and pray? You know, why are we going out there to be praying for the community? Couldn't we stay in the church and pray for them?
Yes.
But we need to make sure they see that we're out there praying for them. No, they don't know what they're seeing. All they see is a bunch of people standing in front of a flagpole praying for the flagpole or praying to the flagpole. But otherwise, I should say, you're armed before men to be seen of them. Otherwise, ye have no reward with your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms, do not sound a what? A trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, that they have their what? The reward. But when thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward you what? Openly. So you know, you heard earlier in the year, the Facebook owner, Mark Zuckerberg, I think his name is, he gave some money to some charity. Then later on, he gave some more money to the Ebola fight, and it was front page news. Everybody must hear. I'm going to give my money to charity. I'm going to give my money to... It still happens today. When people are giving their alms, they make sure they want to hear what it is. The best one I've watched all year long, and if you have never seen this is just hilarious. There's a rich guy from China. There's people starving in China, but he came to New York and he was going to give a ball to, I think it was like 500 or 1,000 homeless people. And he was going to give them a food. He was going to give them, I think, $300, and he was going to give them a plate of, expensive food, expensive plate of food, right? And he announced it to the newspaper. He pull out a full page Time magazine ad in the newspaper and tell these people. None of you saw this, but the people turned up. A lot of them were turned away at the door. Too many came. And he came in there and he also did a karaoke, sang karaoke. When he was there, the media was covering it. And then while he was there now, the announcement came that says the $300 was not going to be given to the homeless people because they thought the non-profit organization was handling it for him, thought it was reckless because, you know, some of these people are going to take the money and buy drugs. So they decided, and also the non-profit who kind of did out of the work decided, said they're going to hold the money and use the money to continue their work. So they pocketed the money. So people were mad. They were mad because they thought they were lied to. All they get was a plate of food. But they got the plate of food. And that's it. But he got newspaper coverage. And one of the things he's going to do when he go back to China, he wanted to run for political office. So he was just burnishing his record. Not to take it to the poor. This thing happened. But is it a sin for him to do what he did? Well, you see now it start becoming nuanced. You see the problem? Because again, what am I looking? What am I sitting there staring at that person for? What am I there crying this drum corps and all these things going on? Another quick one. Is it a sin to give gifts? Is it a sin to give gifts? No, it's not a sin to give gifts, right? How about when you go to a wedding? You can bring a gift, right? How about somebody's birthday? You can bring a gift. You know, you come bearing presents. And if you ever come and visit me, come bearing presents. But Proverbs 7:22 gives us some idea that says it's not always that clean. And that's basically what I'm looking at. You know, I'm not trumpeting here. I'm just simply just having us thinking about something that is always not very clear. It's not very black and white. You know what I'm saying? Because somebody could say, is it a sin to give presents? And I'm going to say, no. I no sin to give presents. Proverbs 22 verse 16. He that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to what? Poverty. So again, I have to consider, well, who I'm giving the gift to. Because if I'm giving something to the rich, who am I giving to the rich? You don't need anything. No, it doesn't mean that you never can give to the rich. What if you get invited to a wedding and a person is already a multi-millionaire? Are you not going to buy a present?
You're not going to buy a present, but something that you could use, like a Bible.
You could buy a Bible for them. It's a good one. So, notice again, is it a sin too? Because most of the time, have you ever been asked those question, is it a sin too? And the thing what the person is asking you, you really can't say logically that it's a sin for them to, as I say, give gifts. It's just, so am I sinning if I go and do this? But the problem with it is that sometimes it depends how it's done, the motives, how it's done, on all these different things. And often some of these, is it a sin to do? Next thing you know, you get yourself into some problems. Because again, it's not good to give to the rich. I think you'll end up poor. Let's go to one of my main texts here for the morning, for the afternoon here, is in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 4. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 4. So I introduced the idea. So you see the idea there. Now, many of these things you have to think it through. And many of these things you can't ever answer people straight up. Do you know what I'm saying? Somebody asks, is it a sin to do this? You're like, well, just wait a minute. Because I know what you're asking me. You're asking me something to drop me into a hole. All right? You're just going to drop me into a hole because I have a reason why I don't do certain things, but I might not think it's a sin, but you need to hear me out why I don't and why I do certain things. In 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 4 says, as concerning therefore the eating of those things that are offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and there is none other God but one. Here, verse 7 now, we're going to jump down a little bit for sake of time. Howbeit there is not in every man that knowledge, for some with conscience of idols unto this hour eat it as things offered unto idols, and their conscience being weak is defiled. But meat commendeth us not to God, for neither if we eat or are we better, neither if we eat not are we worse. But take heed lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak. So just in context, an idol is nothing. So if somebody gets a piece of idol and it says, this is an idol, they sacrifice this food or meat. Food is the word would be there. So let's say I give this apple to this idol and the apple is there. Somebody will say, well, the idol is nothing, so I can eat the apple. Right? Another person will say, if you eat that apple, you're acknowledging the idol. You're basically partaking of this idol worship because this thing here is condemned. Now, is the apple condemned? No, the apple is not condemned. Right? There's nothing wrong with the apple because there's no such thing as an idol. Now, the person who sacrificed the apple to the idol, does the person believe that the idol is real? Yeah, in their mind, it's real. Right? Now, if you partake of it, and now because you ain't fooling me, I'm eating that apple. Right? And I eat the apple. Somebody else is a Christian, say, he's a devil worshiper. He's an idol worshiper because what he just did, he ate the apple. So Paul says, not because it's a sin per se to eat the apple, but because you might cause somebody to stumble because they see you eat the apple and thinking you're eating the apple sacrificed to idol. But Paul said there's no such thing as no idol. We know this. There's only one, what? One true God. And so for hence, not because of it's an issue of the sin of the action, because there's no sin to me eating an apple sacrificed to idol. The action is not sinful. But what's going to be sinful is my unconsiderate, or me not considering the brethren that is watching me doing it. If you see what I'm saying. This is what Paul is saying. So notice again, sometimes it's that motive. And it's that conscience. For conscience sake. That's what Paul says. For conscience sake. You have to be... Because how many people celebrate Christmas and many secular people say, it's pagan, why are you all doing it? Now you and I know that Christmas is a season, it's real. Not in your mind, but in everybody else's mind.
Yep.
Right? But you know and I know that Jesus was not born December 25th.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? But do they believe that says Christ was born December 25th? It's to me just like an idol. They really believe that says that Jesus was born a few days from now. And they're serious about it. And they're going to go ahead and enjoy their time. Now me, know that is nothing. But again, we go down and we go from that point of view to the point of view. Since I know it's nothing, I'm just going to celebrate it anyhow. I know all of a sudden people say you're celebrating something pagan, which is technically is. So we keep going with the line of reasoning. I'm going to put down it's a remote. Now, here he continues verse 10. It says, for if any man sees thee, which as knowledge sit at meat in the idol's temple. You know what? Idol's temple. Shall not the conscience of him which is weak be emboldened to eat those things which are awful to idols? So here, this is why this is one of the most difficult passages sometimes to deal with, especially for us when we deal with people who are of other faith, because they use this to justify a lot of behavior. Now he's saying that says, you're in a temple. So imagine this is a temple for Diana. That's one of the famous ones in the New Testament. And you're there, know that there's no such thing as Diana. There's no such thing as no God named Diana because there's only one God. And you're there eating the food that was sacrificed to idol. You're gaming the system, so to speak. Another brother saw you walking out of the temple. What is he going to think? You're a devil worshiper. So he said, for conscience sake, but he even goes deeper. Look at the last line there in verse 10. He says, shall not the conscience of him which is weak be emboldened to eat those things which are offered to idol? Do you see the nuance of how he's arguing there? This is why Paul becomes one of the most difficult person to follow sometimes. Because he's saying, I know it's nothing. Right? I know it's nothing. So it's not really a sin per se to do it. But now, when you think about it, why are you in there? Why are you in there? Because you're almost giving credence to evil. And you're going to encourage people to practice things that in general, I'm not saying that says, as I say, picking up an apple and eating it is a sin. Because you can't say picking up an apple and eating it is a sin. But you know that thing is sacrificed to idol and idol worship is wrong. Why are you there partaking of it? Because the other person now might go and say, hey, John is doing it, so I can do it too. And I'm going to show you that says, Paul is right even in his, run argument, because later on it became a trouble in the church. I'm going to show you. All right? Now, look at verse 11. We're going to see how it is going. And through thy knowledge shall the weak brother perish for whom Christ died. Now you see the double talk that Paul is doing, because he said next, that brother is going to be a full devil worshiper or full idol worship, believing that it's okay to worship Diana. Now how did he get to worshiping Diana?
Because he saw the brother.
He saw the brother eating in there. That brother never going to worship Diana, but the brother that saw him there going to go not only eat the food sacrificed to idol, next you know what he's going to do? Start worshiping Diana.
That's right.
He start worshiping Diana. Now one brother going there and he could be there 10 years and all he's doing is gaming them, eating the food. Right? Because he's just there for the food.
That's right.
Another brother come in and see him eating the food and saying, oh, not only is he eating the food, but he's partaking of the worship. You see the problem there? And that's the problem when we discuss the issue. Not very easy to work through mentally. Is it a sin per se, as I said, to have a wreath? No. But if you have that wreath, what does everybody that see that wreath in the church door think? You celebrate Christmas, right? And what is that they're thinking? They say you're probably doing gift giving. You have probably a statue in the back with Santa Claus. They assume every other thing because of that one wreath in the front. So Christ says, if you write and offend you have to cut it off. It's not that it's a sin, but it's just a problem that says, what are the steps that we're taking? If you have a Christmas tree, is it a sin to have the Christmas tree? No, you can read in Spirit Proverbs, it's very clear. It's not a sin. But the problem is that we went from having it to now it's full for Christmas present celebration. Come to church and start by giving gifts. Doing the whole 9 yards. And now we're just fully out there like everybody else. And if you come to church, the brother that is weaker would believe that, say, you really believe that Christ was really born December 25th? They would believe it. Because your actions show that you believe in December 25th to be the birth of Christ. And you tell them, no, I don't believe that. But they say, but your actions show that you do. And I'm celebrating the whole thing. You see the problem there? It takes another step. Verse 13 says, where if meat make thy brother to offend, I will eat no flesh while the world standeth, lest I make my brother to offend. No flesh. He said, look, I cut it off. Forget about it. Because if this is going to create a problem, I'm not going to partake. That's the problem with a lot of that type of stuff. It's just what it means and how it's just like 1, 2, 3 steps. As I say, is it something a sin to give a gift? No. Is it a sin to have a tree in your house? No. Is it a sin to have flowers? No. Is it a sin to do nothing like that? But the problem is where the steps goes. Now again, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, same line of reason again, same Paul again is struggling with this problem in the church because we see where it goes. And most of those things, they never remain the same. Things always get out of hand because human beings do that. And we got to know this. And it's not that we're irrational and we don't want to be part of the society and don't want to do the things that the society does. It's just that it always get out of control. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 23 through 33. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, we'll just go over a little bit here. Listen to Paul again, line of reasoning. It says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. So it says all things are lawful. Is it legal for you to go outside and cut a tree down and bring it into your house? Is somebody going to arrest you for it? No. It's lawful. But is it expedient? Is it something that you must do? He says no. Not everything I must do. You go to Colorado, is it lawful for you to smoke weed? Yes. But are you going to smoke some marijuana? No. It's lawful, but it's not expedient for me to do it. No, not because everybody's doing it, that means I can't do it. Now, if they want to do it, that's their business, but I'm not going to do it.
That's right.
Because something is lawful to drink alcohol. Are you going to drink alcohol? No. It's not expedient, Paul says. And he continues arguing here, says, let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles or the marketplace, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. So if you know that says, this person here is an Hindu, and he's selling some meat or some food, you know what he did with that food before he brought it to you? He consecrated it to Krishna, right? What if you go to the Jew, doesn't they do the same thing? Yeah. If you go to the halal market, they do the same thing. Yeah. So he said, don't ask no question. Just go right ahead and just buy it and eat it and enjoy yourself. If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Because why they invited you to the house, and you know that says they just cut that goat off and offer the goat to the devils. Right? So he said, don't ask no question. For conscience sake. What you don't know? So here it says, for conscience sake, for verse 26, for the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. No tree that bears a fruit belongs to the devil or to an idol. It belongs to who? God. So he said, you know this. You know this. If any of them that believe not bid you to go conscience sake. All right, verse 28. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for sake that, eat not for his sake that show it, and for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. So he's saying that if you go and the person said to you, say, you see this up mango I'm giving you, it was sacrificed to idols. I consecrated this mango to idol. You say, I can't eat that. You say you can't eat it. You understand what I'm saying here? I can't eat it. Because if I eat it, it's almost like I'm acknowledging there's another God. So you say, for conscience, if you don't know, you partake. But if he tells you, you say, I can't eat that. I can't. Because he told you. All right, for conscience sake. But although you still know that, said, because the earth is the Lord, you cannot acknowledge such madness. Verse 29. Conscience, I say, not thine own, but rather what? The other. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? Question asked. For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that which I give thanks? So he's saying, look, it's not me. I'm not doing it for myself. Right? I'm doing it for the person. Because if I partake of it, it's almost like I'm saying, I believe what you're doing. And I'm saying, no, I don't believe that. For conscience sake. So sometimes as you say, you don't partake of certain things, and people say, why? Not for me, because I believe it's foolishness, but for your conscience. Because you need to know that what you're doing is wrong. You know, you need to know that this is not, look, celebrate your Christmas, but take out Christ and then say you're doing a mass. Right? For me's sake. But for your sake, you can do whatever you want to. You can believe whatever lie you want to. But there's no such thing as Saint Nick. Saint Nick was probably want to keep your kids away from Saint Nick. That's the reality. Now it says here, whether therefore ye eat or drink, whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. It is in this context that this text is coming in. Whatever you're doing, you have to do it to the glory of God, because you can't be eating and drinking like people putting stuff in front of you and they say this is sacrifice and you just eat it. That means something you have to reject, because you have to do it to what? The glory of God. Because remember, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. You see what I'm saying? Now you know there's no such thing as idol. But again, you're sinning because the sin is not so per se eating the food. The sin is that you're confirming the brother in his sin. That is evil. And verse 32 says, give no offense neither to the Jew, nor to the Gentile, nor to the church of God, even as I please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Right? Now, by the time we come into the Dark Ages, this argument that Paul is here raising has totally been left aside and demolished in the church. And we see a full display of heathen rites and customs being practiced by the church. So now it was not the church just eating meat sacrificed to idols. We had gone past that by the time we reached the Dark Ages. No, what it happened is that says we're sacrificing the meat to the idols in the church. The church became pagan. And the things that the church were doing were not because it's just the heathens were doing it. They just baptized the heathenism and brought it straight into church. So by the time we come in now into the Dark Ages, the latter part of the Dark Ages, and also it's mentioned in the church before Thyatira, which we're going to read about next, in Revelation chapter 2, verse 18 through 20, we find the church is totally taken over. It's mentioned in Thyatira here. That says basically the church had fully adopted not just the idea of eating things sacrificed to idol by pagans. They have adopted the pagan cultures and practices in the church. And you can see that in Pergamos, the church in Pergamos, you can see that in the early part, this is between the 300 AD to 530 AD, before the full reign of the Catholic Church. The church already had started practicing in the church the pagan customs. Now there in Revelation 2, verse 18 through 20 says, and unto the church in Thyatira write, these things says the Son of God, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fires, and his feet like unto fine brass. He says, I know thy works and charity and service and faith and thy patience and thy works, and the last to be more than the first. And so he's saying, you have good things about you. But here it says, notwithstanding, I have few things against thee, because thou sufferest the woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed to what? Idol. When we look at the church and this concept of eating things sacrificed to idols, the church itself had totally embraced this. Reject what Paul was saying and totally embrace paganism. We look at a lot of the practice that the church does with the various different type of symbols and stuff like that. They all came from paganism. And so the church would just fully embrace the pagan principles and the pagan cultures. So that's why now you would have is Saint Nick, and he carries presents. And there's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and he's flying with Nick to come to your house because he knows who is naughty and who is nice. Then you have the Christmas trees, and you have all these things, and all this just became part of the church worship. And then you just wouldn't do a pagan mass or pagan celebration, you do Christ mass. It became Christ that was over it. The winter solstice, December 25th, the celebration of Jesus' birth was really the end of, I guess, the sun, and the sun was going to be rebirthed at December 25th and start to rise again. All of this was pagan culture that was now given a Christian name, Christianized, and now we celebrate it. So the problem with that is that it says, it is not so much as I say, if I want to decorate. Nothing wrong with decorating. The problem is, why are you doing it? How did we get here? And how we got here was literal because the church accepted the world into his worship. And by the time we reach in Thyatira and from there onward until we come into the latter part of the 1500s and stuff, it was just total paganism. What we call church was more pagan. Paul was there, look, don't do it. Paul is very clear. Hopefully you saw that it was very clear. Paul is saying basically, if it's going to look like paganism, you need to cut it out. If you're going to be endorsing paganism, you need to cut it out. Again, it is difficult to say to a person, that's why I try not to have this conversation with people who are secular. Because if I say to them that says, look, I don't be doing that, it's hard for me to explain to them. Because, if you say it's pagan, I'm dissing them. You're disrespect. You're raining on their parade. So I don't answer those questions. I have that discussion amongst Christians, but even some Christians, you can't say that to them. Because what happened, I was surprised, I don't know if I've told this, but I was surprised. I saw a church in Maryland, and when I say the backdrop of the church was like a continuous row of Christmas trees decorated, big Christmas celebration. I thought I was looking at something pagan. I mean, seriously, something secular, like, over there in New York by the Rockefeller, thingy. That's how it looked. It's like the whole church is decorated. It's like I don't know how many Christmas trees they brought in and decorated them. And I was like, what is that for? But that's the church. And it's just gift giving and it's all this type of thing. And I'm thinking, it sounds nice and fuzzy, but where did that come from? I guarantee it came from, first, let's just do a Christmas tree and put presents underneath it for the poor. Because that's what the Spirit of Prophecy says. If you must. Envelopes. Put envelopes for the poor. The next thing you start to attach the envelopes to the Christmas tree. Then say, well, let's not stop there. Let's put the presents on the tree and then put some real decoration on. And next thing let's start giving each other gifts, and it just escalate. And that's where all of this thing comes out. You escalate. A few more thoughts before we close here. Is it a sin to defend oneself? I think I close on this one. Is it a sin to defend oneself? Just to show here, well, let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 25 first. Is it a sin to defend oneself? And, and so it's very clear. If I see somebody doing something, I don't want to say, oh, you're sinning yourself and stuff like that. But often it goes from one to the next to the next. And it always go back to Christ and you have to think a little bit harder in some of these things. If somebody say, why don't you do this? I say, I don't do it because of this and that. And somebody say, but are you saying it's sin? I'm not saying it's sin. Before we read that, one of the thoughts that is always there. Ellen G. White said there's no sin in playing ball, which there's no sin. If I see a basketball and I pick it up and I throw it through the hoop, am I sinning myself? No, it's not a sin. It's not a sin to play ball. But, again, next somebody see me playing the ball, and then they want to see if they can dunk on me. And then, no, I can't allow that. But remember, we didn't start with that as a sin to play ball. Right? We started that says, it's exercise, but we're going to end up, I should say, where now It's not going to become competitive. I remember one day I was somewhere in the lake and we were just having a good time. You know, this is going back about 15 years ago. We was having a good time and we were just rolling. And this lady said, let's race to go over there. And I'm like, wait, no. I don't need to be racing to go nowhere. I'm okay right here. I'm just enjoying myself on the lake. If you want to go ahead, go ahead. And then you start to, because somebody's going to get bruised. You know what I'm saying? Because somebody's going to outdo somebody and somebody's going to get hurt. And that's where the problem. So you just keep it simple and just whatever. And sometimes because of that, no, you got to cut the whole activity out because people just know to behave themselves. And this is where a lot of these things happen. You know, America is a free country, as they say. But the moment criminals start to do something, they start taking away the freedom. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Because people just don't know to behave themselves. You go to the supermall and you go to buy something, you go to the store to buy something, you probably have 15% added to the cost of your goods. Why? Because people go in there stealing. And now you have cameras everywhere, you have everything here because people don't know to behave themselves. But it's not a sin per se for some of these things, but it's where they end up with. And you always say end up with. So Christ says, you know, look. And that's why one of the most difficult group of people to control in any church is the singers. Right? Now, is it wrong to have a choir director? No. But I saw a video recently and the way this choir director was behaving, I would just come over and say, look, you got to sit down. You got to sit down. There's men in the church. You can't be even like this. You have your back turned to the men and all gyrating yourself and going out. Like, sit down. You can't behave like this. But again, is it a sin to have a choir director? No. But if the choir director can't behave themselves, it's a sin. You got to sit down. No, is it a sin? No, this is what I want to say before I close. Is it a sin for me to wear light colors as a pastor? No. No, right? Is it best for me to wear darker colors? You remember, even our society is a problem. I remember when Obama came out with a color suit like this, you know what happened? It made headline news. A president of the United States came out in light colors. It's just not, it's not business attire. Now what happened now is if it's a sin if I came with a white suit. It might be very hot that day. You see the problem there? People just don't know to behave themselves. So they go from one to the next to the next. So somebody said, look, we're going to make a policy in the church. No pastor can come up with the pulpit unless they wear a dark suit. Because one pastor came with white suit. I'm just saying, but this is where it goes many times. That's why I'm not preaching. We're just talking here. Oftentimes it goes that it just keep, you know, and next you know you have to make a policy. You know, no chewing gum. Everybody have to check their phone to make sure it's off and blah, blah, and you say, why are they making such a big deal out of it? You don't know what we have to go through at church. And so that's where the problem is. Nothing wrong with many of these things. But it is, as Ellen White said, it's the ungodly level that it goes. It goes from just something benign, you know, oh, it's innocent. We just want to do this to the kids be able to bring up a little present for Jesus one Sabbath before Christmas. And then somebody says, so you all celebrate Christmas? Well, no, we don't. Do you believe Jesus was born December 25th? Definitely not. So why are you doing the thing? And you have to answer. Did I give a definitive answer for this sermon? Probably not. But I just want you to think along with me here as to why here we don't get into these type of celebration. Just don't start it and we don't have no problem. The moment you start, everybody start look forward to it. And then you have a problem. Does that make sense?
The Bible says the imaginary men are evil, and there is no bounds to sin. So there needs to be certain boundaries.
Boundaries are set up. Anyhow, last text about suing people. Is it a sin to defend oneself or to petition for a redress of grievance? And yet, I would say no, it's not a sin to sue. I don't believe it's a sin to sue. I don't believe it's a sin to defend oneself with a lawyer. I just don't believe it. But we're going to read a text now and listen to what this text says to close. It says, Matthew chapter 5 verse 25 first says here, agree with thine adversary quickly while thou art in the way, lest at any time the adversary deliver you to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officers, and thou be cast into prison. What is Christ really teaching here? That says, the way we live, we always have to be doing things to try to avoid going into the deep. You know, going to the deep. In whatever situation, let's say, I'm dealing with different concepts here. But if you know you have an adversary and he's going to lock you up, he's going to cause you to get locked up, what are you supposed to be doing? Eh? Try to make peace. Say, brother, look, I'm sorry for what I did with you. Could you take $5? Right? You give the $5 to the brother, and you don't go to prison. What some people gonna do?
Make a big thing about it.
Oh, make a big thing. You go fight all out, and they're gonna end up in prison. If you know that says whatever, you settle. You said to the prosecutor, come, Lord, I wanna talk to you. Look, I'm really sorry for what happened, but could you strike me a deal? And the prosecutor said, okay, I'll strike you a deal. You go into the court, you start, and next thing you know, you're getting even more fine. You're getting double. You settle it fast. But there's nothing wrong to defend oneself. But in all these things, what Christ is saying is that make an effort to do the right thing. Make an effort. And sometimes that's all we're doing. We're just trying to make an effort to do the right thing because we don't want to end up over here. Somebody said, well, that's kind of extreme. But to me, ending up in the wrong place is an extreme. So Christ says, settle with your adversary fast in the way. Don't go to prison. And I believe that's important to do because it's not good. Verse 38 now to 42 to close. And it says here, ye have heard that it's been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So Christ is saying it's been said. Is it legal that there's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Is it legal that there's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? Yes. Right? If a person does something to you, you say, well, everybody says, look, they killed this person, they need to go to prison or they need to suffer the death penalty. We have this rule still in our country. Right? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But hear what Christ says. Christ is not contradicting the Bible. Listen to what Christ says here. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if a man will sue you at the law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asks thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Christ is saying basically it's all about the attitude of want to do the right thing. You can't have in a society everybody suing everybody and everybody defending. And everything we must settle in a court. That's chaos. And we see this as we're living in a country that like to sue. Your neighbor has a problem with you. Next thing you know, you're getting a letter in the mail. You have to show up in court. All the neighbor had to do was come and do what? Talk to you. Just knock your door and say, look, I'm having this problem. You know, your gutters need to be controlled. Your gutters is running too much silt on my property. Can you fix it? Oh, yeah, I'll fix it. And then your attitude is, oh, I'll fix it. Because you need to settle with your adversary while you're on the way. You say to your neighbor, oh, man, I'm sorry for that. I know it's been happening for 10 years now. And I should have taken care of it, but I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'm going to fix it because I don't want to go to court over this.
That's right.
It's not so much that says it's not legal for us to do something. Paul says everything is lawful for me, but not everything is expedient. I don't need to do it because I don't need to be warring and fighting and going to court. I've seen people... I don't even talk about that. This lady that killed our family member, she was in court with how many different people at a given time? Court with her neighbors, court with her husband, court with everything. Just keep suing everybody. And when she couldn't get her way, finally, she killed 2 of her family members. All right, this is a professional lady, supposed to have money, and she used that money to sue everybody. And Christ says, as a Christian, we can't have that attitude. We can't always trying to see how much we can get away with.
That's true.
You know, trying to see how much we can get away with. Lord, we're gonna have the tree, but we're not gonna have all the decorations on the tree. Lord, can we just leave it alone? Because the moment you take 1 step, you have to take 2 steps, you have to take 3 steps. I know you have 4 steps. I know you're in total sin. So the question is not so much this is the sin. It's not a sin to sue. I don't think Christ is saying that says if somebody steals from you, you can't call the police. See, many people interpret this text to mean if somebody steals from you, you can't call the police. If somebody trying to sue you, can't defend yourself. Christ is saying your attitude shouldn't be about always trying to defend oneself. Sometimes people sue you for your cloak. You can't have it. Somebody say, why, Lord? Because I'm going to tell you sometime you could spend more money trying to defend for that one coat.
And what the coat is worth.
His coat is not worth it. I'm sure you've heard people say, somebody do you wrong, and somebody say, I'm going to kill the person, and somebody come to you and say, look, it's not worth it.
Yes, that's right.
It's not worth it. Leave it alone. they rob from you, let them have the money. Look, I'm telling you, you could spend hours and hours and hours, heartache, pain, and you still, even after you get back your money, when you calculate the amount of money you have to sue to get back your money, you lost. The lawyer took the money. It is not so much that says, is it wrong to do it? Is it wrong to pray in public? No. What is the circumstance? Is it wrong to decorate? No. Why are you doing it? Is it wrong to, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a lady Monday. Interesting enough, I say this to you as an example, because I've been thinking about this. And she said to me, yeah. She said, because I was talking to her, this is a lady I know in the community. We were running into each other, so I ran into her this week, and I was talking to her, so, I was telling her I'm Adventist and blah, 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 blah. And then we're talking about ornate churches, or some of the churches, they're like museums, they're just so, wow. She said you just sit there. She go over to one in New York, I can't remember what she says, and she just sit there sometimes, look at it. And I said, yeah, but, our church, we don't believe in that. We believe that we're supposed to preach truth, serve the community. So she said, yeah, somebody I know there's an Adventist church near them, and I've seen other Adventist churches. He says they're never decorative. They're never they're plain. I say, yeah, but we believe that's how a church is supposed to be. Plain. It's supposed to be it's just there as a facility, just to serve. It's not there to look. So somebody come and say, don't you believe in decoration? You believe it's a sin to decorate? No, I don't believe it's a sin to decorate. But what's the reason why? Where are we going with this? How far are we going to go with this? Where are we going to take this? Next we start doing it, and it's one thing, and then two things, and then three things. Next we're just in the same place. And I believe that's how the Catholic Church came about. It is a lot of this type of reason where it's not wrong with it. And you can't argue and say it's wrong, but it's not what's wrong with this over here. It's what's wrong with the next three steps. Because normally you start, it's hard to stop. Is it wrong to have a choir director? No. But it's very difficult. And I say, if you cannot, I was going to bring somebody to school, but I said, I'll just talk to them. If you cannot control the musicians, she said, cut the music out. Somebody will say, that's extreme. It is extreme, but when you see some of these churches now where the music have gotten to, you can understand why I said, cut it out. Now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you went to some church, they'll tell you that's extreme. And I would agree, it would be extreme. But now, where we at? These people are extreme. It's not about music. It's the pastor basically is not even the main, the preaching is not the main thing. It's that music. And when the music is finished, the church is really done. The pastor is just there to say the benediction and go home. That is extreme. And to me, that's where most of these things. So again, is it a sin to do whatever? Is it a sin to eat meat? I can't say it's a sin to eat meat. But again, you see what we're eating nowadays? You see what the society is eating? That's a sin. But again, to tell somebody that they say, oh, you're extreme, Lloyd. This is very extreme what you're saying. You're saying it's a sin to eat meat. And you can't show me to the Bible. I'm going to say, okay, I agree with you. I don't say it's a sin, but it's a sin when you look at what you're eating. It's a sin what they're doing to the animals. That's the sin. And it's a sin why you eating it. It's killing you. Can't you see? That's the sin for you to abuse your body. So is it a sin to do many of these things? No. But again, Christ says we ought not to be pushing the envelope of doing wrong. We need to be pushing the envelope of doing right. And if you know that says it's going to lead to other things, don't even start. And so, God bless you. And I know to stay on the straight and narrow is not easy. That's why I wanted to talk about this to you. Because, when you make this decision, people can look at you as very straight-laced, fanatical, extreme. But there's a reason for it, and God has blessed us. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm just saying because people, everybody want you to join in. Is it a sin for me to go to my family members over the Christmas holiday? No, no sin. It's just because I don't believe in it per se, but I just want to be amongst my family. But that's where they want me to be amongst them. So is it a sin? I'm not saying it's a sin, but at the end of the day, we make certain decisions because we have a reason. They don't because they don't know why. And that's their choice. But our choice is that we don't do certain things. As I say, a lot of things is not a sin, but a lot of it is the ungodly level that people take it to. And they make it to know Jesus Christ. As I say, Santa Claus has something to do with Jesus Christ. It's nothing to do with Jesus Christ. It's just to do with paganism. So may God bless you as we sing our closing hymn 462, I think it is.